Lads, we're back.
Yep.
We're back.
Hey, the openings are getting that much more juicier, more lively.
I think it's because we just have such a good episode.
I know.
No
There's an
spoilers.
interview coming a little later.
Oh, damn, spoiled it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why the only reason we're going to sound warmed up is because we already did like a 30, 40 minute
I know.
We'll get to that a little later. With good old Alex, who is the interview with?
My friend Chase. You'll hear more about him. I'm not spoiling it.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
Really nice guy, actually. Was talking about some Habs during the interview that made me smile. But anyway, look forward to that at the end of the Power Hour. And then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, after the Power Hour, after the interview, we're going to talk about the 14-15/15-16 Toronto Maple Leafs.
Thanks to our good friend.
Thanks to Talha. By the way, shout out to the person in our Google Doc who is an anonymous leper.
Probably Daniel.
I saw Alex's name there and then it disappeared. So
yeah, I just closed the document.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I like how Daniel's background is now some sort of other those pops.
Yeah, I'm sort of in a reorganization of things right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
is that what you guys have been
Buffalo
doing?
Sabres thing and my Steve Nash poster over there, but
Buffalo.
Fixing it up.
Is that what you guys have been doing lately, reorganizing things? Because that is what I've been doing.
Yeah, anything that might feature. Oh my gosh.
I cleaned under my bed and that was pretty bad. There were some wrappers there, like nothing gross. It was just like dusty and terrible. It was like, this is pretty bad.
Memories of a forgotten past. Memories of a forgotten past.
Just like the 14, 15, 15, 16 Leafs.
Hey.
So, anyway, there's some stuff to talk about in the hockey world.
And non-hockey world.
And, well, there's I'm doing it, Alex. We're going to transition. You got to let me get back in the flow of things here. Iceberg coming through the show. Let's go. Anyway, though, lads, if people want to see how just pumped we're getting talking about the Titanic and stuff, they should totally check out the show on YouTube. It's a whole nother experience. We're actually on Zoom now instead of Skype because Skype sucks.
That's not true. Stop saying these things.
I mean, if they sponsor us, then they're awesome. But that's
no, we're only going to use Skype, yeah. But for now, we have our options.
Adam's banning people from the show, and he's trashing companies.
Exactly. Well, I did unban someone at one point, but anyway, that's not important. But yeah, as I was about to say before Alex just, came in the way of my Titanic on the way to Halifax or whatever, yes, there is stuff going in the hockey news. But before we get to that, let's talk about, the tomfoolery, the yahoos.
Cowards.
What did you call them?
Cowards.
I was just going with the Doug Ford yahoos.
No.
Mind-boggling.
No.
Mind-boggling.
Adam, can you say cowards?
Coward.
No, you always say it in a way.
What?
Cowards. Maybe it's not cowards. I don't know. There's a word he says. Bastards. I don't know. Whatever.
What?
He says it. It makes it sound 10 times better.
Those cheeky bastards.
There we go. See, I knew it. It was coming.
Snappy snap power hour. People in Toronto and really across the world are protesting against these social distancing things, including the as the premier called them what were they, hooligans or the tomfooleries?
Yeah.
The yahoos at Queen's Park. The best tweet I saw was "Keep your laws off my body," and then somebody said, "Okay, you can say that, but when a woman wants to choose, then it's not right." I was like, Well, there we go. Fantastic. It's just the hypocrisy of some of these people. And just how stupid they are. Just like the premier said, and I only agree with Doug Ford a lot, to be honest with you, because I'm a student and he hates students. But these idiots are just sending us back weeks now, and it's so frustrating. I want to go outside.
You should have heard what I went, because I go for a walk every day for like an hour with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I go for a walk with my mom. And you should have heard the things I was saying yesterday about these people. I can't repeat them on the podcast. I absolutely cannot.
I think you could, but you just have to censor it, which is more work.
Yeah, I know, that's no.
Well, I do that enough.
It's really bad. No, it was bad. Just stay inside, man.
Mm-hmm. Reorganize your room like Daniel is.
I already did.
Mm-hmm.
I already did. That already happened.
You're gonna hang stuff in your setup, by the way, Alex. Is that Matthew's jersey still on the floor?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have to. Well, I was.
gotta hang these now too, so I have a bit of a background.
Mm-hmm. What jerseys?
Who you talking?
I was talking to Daniel.
Yeah, I know. I was
Me?
waiting for Daniel's.
I have my Giguère Mighty Ducks jersey.
Of course you do.
You
Martin
mean
Bro-
Leafs legends, John
Leafs
Sebastian
legend,
Giguère.
yes. Martin Brodeur on the Devils and on
Best
Team
goalie
Canada.
ever.
Yeah.
I swear, every time you bring up a Leafs legend and Martin Brodeur, I think I age a few months because I just felt a heavy weight on my shoulders. I guess we'll go to hockey. What else can we really say about?
Who else do I have? Marc-Andre Fleury, Pittsburgh.
Guess not. If we're just gonna keep going like this, the new episode of Star Wars Clone Wars was fucking good. I'm gonna tell you.
Don't spoil it. I have to watch the whole series.
Dude.
You do. That's next episode of Bizarre Adventures. Watch all 7 series. Anyway, hockey news. Apparently was signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Or was he?
Or was he? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. Anyway, no, he didn't. He didn't. So anyway, the contract got rejected from the league. Basically, it just goes against the signing principle because technically he's – and you may be asking yourself, yeah, but Adam, the Leafs signed Barabanov. The Habs signed Vasily Jadenko, I believe his name was. That's because, and I asked Alex this, those guys are technically signing as entry-level deals. Mikhail Grigorenko, as you may know, is a former Sabre and has been around the league. So the Blue Jackets are basically now going to sign him on July 1st.
Or whenever free agency is.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Is it just – this is so goofy. And this is what we have to cling to news, by the way.
Well, I think we would have talked about either way. I think this is an interesting signing for Columbus. They're one of those teams that we didn't really know what they were at the beginning of the year simply because, you lose Panarin, you lose Bobrovsky. And what is this team? They brought in Gustav Nyquist, and that was kind of their big addition, obviously, other than re-signing Werenski. But you look at Grigorenko. I know, yes, he played for Moscow, which is one of those big teams in Russia that pretty much wins every other year with St. Petersburg. But, 47 games, 41 points this year before the season stopped. 55 games, if it was 52 points the year before. Those are his last 2 years. It just didn't seem like it worked out in the NHL. And I was listening to Brian Burke talk on Hockey Central at noon. And his thing with Grigorenko at the time of when he was being drafted is it seemed like it was his motivation. And, he's 25, and that's really – sure, that's something that you can change. So, hopefully that is something that can change. He's a former first-round picked by Buffalo in 2012. He was part of the original Ryan O'Reilly deal that sent Ryan O'Reilly to the Buffalo Sabres. So that's Mikhail Grigorenko.
You want to hear? Sorry, Daniel. Do you want to hear a joke?
Okay.
Once a Sabre, always an afterthought. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, well, because I messaged you when the deal first was announced, and you forgot that he was an Avalanche.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Sorry, Daniel. What were you gonna say there, bud?
Oh, no, don't worry. It was something about, same thing like what Alex was saying with, Brian Burke on Grigorenko. That whole thing where, he was on Central Scouting. He was, top 5, top 3? He really kind of, tore it up with the Quebec Ramparts. And then this was a guy that whole thing, motivation, attitude, that's what drops him out of, the top 5, top 10. He went 12th in that draft.
Yeah, he was part of that weird draft, the 2012 draft. I think that was the Yakupov draft, Ryan Murray, Griffin Reinhart, Alex Galchenyuk, Morgan Riley. It's that weird draft where things just didn't go, I think, for a lot of players.
Yeah, I thought Derek Pouliot coming out of that was going to be amazing.
Good old Derek Pouliot.
Wasn't Pouliot going to be a centerpiece of the Castle
yes.
deal? But,
yes.
but Pittsburgh are nah.
They want to get rid of him.
Kapanen.
I'll take it.
Loser. Finland.
We'll get to that deal.
What, Phil Kessel?
Yeah, later on.
That sounds like a retro review type.
Sounds like a retro review.
Oh no! Yeah, it's today doing. Yeah, because that happened. Maybe, I don't know. It's a surprise. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But yeah, I mean, Grigorenko. I mean, good for Columbus. You get another warm body. You know, you just get players to go.
And it's a 1-year deal, right? And yeah, it's $1.2 million. It's not league minimum or like $925, like Barabanov, like Mikhaev. Where are some other Russian players that have come back? The name's not coming to me here.
Trampkin? No, he hasn't come back yet. Radulov came back?
Right. So, you know, he's not signing a low, like it's still low risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst case? After a year, he walks?
Yeah.
Or, you know, you send him to the AHL, but he's like, screw that, I'm going to go back to Russia.
The upside's still there.
But the upside's still there. I think it can either turn out to be like an Ilya Mikhaev situation where he's like, man, like you can kind of play this guy, or it can turn out to be like a Vadim Shipachayev where he's like, no, I'm going back.
That was messy. I forgot about Shipachayev. Staying on the Columbus route though, they re-signed or say they extended Jonas Korpisalo last week. Now they have also extended Elvis Merzlikins, their star little goaltender, 2 years, $4 million AAV. Of course, Elvis Merzlikins was at the start of the year pretty bad. Then all of a sudden he turned it on. His record, have cap friendly up this year. Oh, never mind, doesn't want to show it, but I will say this: in 33 games played, a 2.35 goals against average and a 923 save percentage. And in this economy, that is a great save percentage.
Yeah, this one was an interesting one for me simply because what is Elvis Merzlikins? He's still a young guy. You know, goalies tend to take a little bit of more time to develop. You know, he played, I believe he was in Russia before this year. He was somewhere in Europe. So it kind of what you didn't really know what he was at the time. He started off poorly, and then, you know, he really kicked it up a notch, got sent down to the AHL, and when he came back, it was like completely different guy. It's kind of a back and forth for me because, you know, $4 million is a lot of money. I think my first impression of the deal was, and I know they're different situations, was I look at his numbers and I look at someone like Jordan Binnington, who really was developing not in Europe, but in North America, and came in last year, so completely surprised everyone. The difference here is that, you know, he was one of the big pieces that really pushed St. Louis to that. From being bottom of the league to that Stanley Cup win. So is it a matter of, you know, the numbers are similar, but the situations are different? This deal, you know, it really depends on what he comes out like next year. I think someone like Binnington, who signed that 2-year extension at $4.4 million, really did prove himself this year and say, yeah, you know, this guy can be an elite goalie. This guy can be your starting goalie or part of that platoon system, whereas we haven't really seen it yet with Merzlikins. And you know, we don't know what the future holds simply because we don't know what this next season or the rest of this season will look like.
Mm-hmm. Daniel.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Kind of low risk bridge deals. I think, you know, you're not going to go long term with it because Columbus is kind of figuring out what they have. You know, they've kind of performed above expectations after losing like Duchesne, Panarin, Brovsky, Zingel to a certain extent. Yeah. So I think that's something that they're going to kind of bring to the table now. See like a bit of like a tandem, see maybe who could kind of like run with it in a potential like playoff berth. One thing I kind of think about that we always talk about is comparing the numbers for these two goalies who have outperformed Sergei Bobrovsky this year. Like the money and like the save percentage is just, it's been crazy for me. So, but I'm happy for Columbus that they've been able to kind of like find these guys later in the drafts and kind of, run with them.
You know what's an interesting thought for me is this duo makes $6.8 million combined for the next 2 years. And, yes, they're kind of still young. We don't really 100% know what at least Elvis Merzlikins is until we at least see him for another year. Jonas Korpisalo has turned out to be, at least this year, can be part of that platoon system. Could they become one of the best duos? Right now we look at Boston with Rask and
Halak.
Is it Halak? Still Halak?
Yeah.
Rask and Halak. Halak's up at the end of the year. What happens there? Hudobin and Ben Bishop. Hudobin is up at the end of the year. What happens there? You look at St. Louis. Are they going to continue with both Jake Allen and Jordan Binnington, considering the Pietrangelo situation? We'll see what happens there. But, they can turn out to be one of the best duos in the NHL. It depends on Merzlikins. We kind of know what we have in Korpisalo, though.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on, we'll go to some coaching news. Of course, over the season, we had a plethora of good coaches being fired for different sorts of reasons. But one of them, and probably the most unjust one, was Gerard Gallant being fired from the Vegas Golden Knights. Not the first controversial firing of his career, but apparently the New Jersey Devils, who were surprisingly good once Elaine Nesradine came in, by the way, and looking at Blackwood's an example of that. The Devils have interviewed Gerard Gallant. Thoughts on a possible, pretty good hire if the Devils can get him? I mean, other teams are going to be talking to him, but Daniel, start us off here. What do you think of this little move or this interest that the Devils are showing in Gerard Gallant?
That's the guy. He's been around. He knows what to do. The only thing I kind of feel with this is like it's another step for New Jersey to kind of do something. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of work that has to be done there. I think if they go in not with kind of the expectations because Vegas had with Gallant, but go like, this is a guy that he's going to be with us on, there's going to be some pain here and there figuring out, New Jersey's identity as well. Like, they have so many young guys, but they also try to make something out of it, but like with Subban, with Wade Simmons, was it Nikita Gusev? Yes, they had all these kind of guys. So I think you're gonna have to be patient there. But if they take that route, then I think it's a great signing.
Yeah, I think it's it would be a really good signing for the Devils. I think he was fired in Vegas quickly. Obviously, yes, there's the Marc-Andre Fleury. He wasn't really putting up the same type of numbers. He had that weird mid-season struggle. But I think another reason is, I think what now is it Kelly McCrimmon? That's who's the GM, right? It's not the name's not coming to me.
The guy you're thinking of is like he stepped up. He's like president. George McPhee. Yeah,
George McPhee. Okay, so it's I think Kelly McCrimmon really wanted to bring in his guy, and I think he always had his eye on Pete DeBoer, and I think he wanted to jump on that chance as quickly as possible. But I think whoever gets Gerard Gallant, I think that's a positive for any team, really. What direction New Jersey is going in, I think they kind of made that clear, trading Sami Vatanen and trading Taylor Hall, in that, okay, I think we're okay with kind of going through that rebuilding phase. You didn't get as much for Taylor Hall as, a lot of us expected. Kind of seems like you got a steal for Sami Vatanen, considering he played 0 games for Carolina, and you got a prospect and a couple picks. But what direction are you planning on going in? I could see New Jersey making a weird signing, a weird goalie signing in the summer, and I think that would really be the wrong move. Like someone like Braden Holtby. if he doesn't re-sign in Washington. I don't think that would be a smart move for the team. I think you want to look for someone who can play that platoon system with Mackenzie Blackwood, because I think Mackenzie Blackwood is your goalie of the future. And you look at his numbers recently after John Hines was let go and Alain Nesreddine was brought in, his numbers were he had a above 900 save, like he had 916 save percentage, I believe, and he had a positive, like he was like, I don't remember his record off the top of my head, but for a team that, had such high expectations and played so poorly, and then to have Mackenzie Blackwood put up such decent numbers really is promising for me.
By the way, the end of the season, Mackenzie Blackwood finished with 915 save percentage. He was 22, 14, and 8. These are the Devils that at one point were clearing away the worst team in the NHL. I wonder, because of course they have that pick, that second pick, the Phoenix pick, I mean.
Yeah.
Daniel?
Yes.
Maybe if they wanted another goalie that, you have to wait a few years because you're not going to be that good, maybe they're a goalie they could maybe draft in the first round.
Yeah. True. Our boy Yaroslav Askarov for St. Petersburg.
Hey.
Yes.
I don't mind them picking, and I think that's something I brought up when we did our 2019 draft. I don't mind them picking a goalie in the draft, but I think it would be a mistake for them to go and make a splash in the goalie market this year.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Because it doesn't necessarily fit their plan. Like, what is your plan? You have Hischier, you have Jack Hughes, you have these guys who are coming up. Do you want to suffer for the next few years to have a longer amount of time where you're going to be great? Mackenzie Blackwood, let's say they drop Yaroslav Askarov. They're going to have another lottery pick. You never know what you can get with this team.
I know what you mean. Like, I don't think they ever really recovered from 2012, like their final appearance. Like, no matter Ray Shiro, if it's Lou Lamoriello, they have a kind of a habit of doing this with new coaches where, like, they'll sign these big guys in free agency or make the big move at the draft, like, getting Corey Schneider, even when he was elite. They brought him into a system where he could not win. Like, that team was bad. Or when they lost Parise and Kovalchuk, they signed Mike Camilleri to 5 years at $6 million per year. Like, these are and he was 32 at the time. So, like, these are kind of moves that have been happening. Like, you brought in Wayne Simmons, PK Subban. It's a kind of thing where New Jersey's kind of have to just slow down, see what we have, and kind of go through a real rebuild.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You look at them, and also it's fair to say that making the playoffs in 2018 was probably the worst thing to happen to the Devils, if you really look at it, because it was a 5-game series of nothing, and look what happened from there. You just went down a hill, and it doesn't help. Jack probably went back to the gone to the NCAA or the CHL, but hindsight is 2020, as they say. You know what I think we should do now?
Go to our interview.
I think that, well, Alex, what do you mean? We're gonna call him right now. It's
yeah. We'll call him right now. What am I? Whoops.
In a second, when we ring and all that, Alex will introduce our guest. But in this interview, you're going to hear about, Arizona State, some of the good players there. Joey Decord, I believe, was the player's name.
That is his name.
There was Senators,
yes.
goaltending prospect, guy to keep your name on. We're going to talk about NCAA versus CHL stuff, some stuff about Eddie Lack, all that kind of fun stuff coming up next here on the 2-in-1 podcast.
Okay, welcome to the first ever guest we've had on this podcast, Chase Drieberg. We've went to school forever, just happened to be at the same school from when we were tiny to when we were 18. My mom taught him, and then we became friends.
3 great years.
Yeah. All right, so you go to Arizona State for the last, I guess, year and a bit because, quarantine and COVID-19.
Yeah.
Did you come back? When did you come back to Toronto?
I came back just before my spring break, which was about March 4th. I think I came back to Toronto, and then I was supposed to be here for about 2 weeks for my spring break. And then in the second week of my spring break is when the whole quarantine shutdown started. So they canceled in-person classes, and I haven't gone back since. So still got all my stuff there and everything, but I'm here now. So it's all that matters.
That's good. And that night, I guess it was a Wednesday night. It was announced Rudy Gobert first was going to be out with an illness. A few nights before, he was going around touching everything, I want to say making a bit of a joke of the whole situation. That night, NBA gets canceled. The next day was the Thursday. The NHL came out, canceled its season. MLS came out, pretty much suspended its season. What was, I guess, your reaction coming out and seeing all this kind of all happen and unfold all at once?
I think when it started with Rudy Gobert is when it became real for people, especially people in the sports world, especially athletes, especially teams. Right when they saw that an athlete got it, it became practical to people and said, okay, now it's not just happening in China or sporadically people coming back from China. Now it's right here, and one of the biggest things that everyone revolves around in in the U.S. and North America in general, which is sports. So right when all those leagues started to get canceled, it started to feel very real for people in the sports world, but just life in general. That when was the last time that sports gets canceled for something like this? Sometimes you see it as a lockout, that in there, but people, and it was just a ripple effect right after Gobert got it.
Yeah. So you're the equipment student manager at Arizona State with the hockey team, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a jack of all trades. You do a little bit of everything, but yeah, equipment, I help out the operations staff, do videos sometimes for coaches, some stat stuff. So it's kind of student manager, but you do, kind of everything wherever you're needed and wherever you want to help.
Right. So with the NCAA, they kind of took their time with at least canceling March Madness. There was the Frozen Four tournament. What was the morale around the team or the reaction from the team after? I guess we can start with when the NBA kind of closed its doors to the NHL, but when all the NCAA tournaments ended up getting canceled.
Yeah, so the NCAA took a little bit long hockey, and this was to go obviously just because of its it was happening in a week. It was about to start, so they had to kind of act a lot quicker. And then all the professional leagues went out, and then about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, maybe 10 days actually, is when the NCAA came out and said the Frozen Four and the rest of the NCAA hockey season's out. And morale for guys who for Arizona State at least, their season started back in June, because they went to China this summer. So they started in June training, then went to August. In August, they went to China for 2 weeks and played a KHL team and some other teams out there and actually won the tournament. So, they're working since June. And then, to lose your season when they're about to be in the NCAA tournament again, they were a 99% lock to make the tournament again, with probably the best chance they've ever had to try and make a run at it. It stings. It hurts, especially for seniors who are, moving on to the professional levels or, they're up hurt working towards one goal of winning a national championship. And, to no fault of your own, there's bigger things in sport, but you kind of lose it just like that, and it's all gone. And your chance to, one, finish your senior year, but two, compete with the guys that you've been working with for 4 years or whatever it's been, you kind of lose your shot to go for it. So it was definitely pretty low, especially once it all got canceled. But, once the professional leagues went out, the NCAA was told, the coach told the guys, you guys, we're going to keep practicing every day. You guys still have the chance to, go and win this national championship. We just got to take some extra measures and, stay healthy, make sure we're, careful. And, they ramped up, making sure the guys were taking any vitamins or anything to try and stay healthy and make sure they were fed well to try and make sure nobody got sick. And then 10 days later, coach comes out and says, just like that, it's over.
Was there any, I guess, pushback from any of the players who I get, let's say, weren't comfortable with going to these practices? Because I guess at the time the NBA shut down, you know, it was starting to ramp up, but we really hadn't hit that peak in, I guess, that was being portrayed to us that, man, like things are going to get worse. Would you say there was any type of pushback from players being uncomfortable of going to these practices?
No, there wasn't any pushback for a few reasons. One, it wasn't horrible in Arizona yet. It's still, comparatively to some of the other states in the U.S., Arizona's still doing well. It wasn't too bad there. And with this kind of happening over spring break, there wasn't, you know, a ton of people around campus. You know, the guys were just kind of with the guys. They went and worked out 7 o'clock in the morning, went to the rink, 2-hour practice, and then kind of went home and chilled either on their own or with each other. So it's not like they were going all out and seeing, you know, different people. But much back in, you know, the reassurance from the university and the athletic department and the coach, you know, telling them that we're going to ramp up measures, we're going to disinfect things extra, we're going to make sure you guys are well fed, make sure you guys are seeing doctors and keeping your health up. You know, it gave them a sense of security. And, you know, for them, you know, hearing that, it kind of said, okay, you know, maybe we'll still get that chance to play in the national championship. And, you know, they're feeling good about it. And then, like I said, 10 days later, it's, you know, just like that, the NCAA tells schools no more practicing, everything's done for the year. And coaches have, you know, no say in it. And, you know, I don't know if they'd want to have a say in it. Obviously, they think there's bigger things and they realize that. So for them, it's just, okay, I guess, you know, it sucks, but we're going to wrap it up.
Do you think that there's any possibility that they not finish out the season, but necessarily go into the tournaments in empty arenas? Because I think we're extremely far from any type of arenas being full. You know, they're talking about going into 2021. You know, that's when we might start seeing arenas start being packed again.
Yeah, and, you know, for sure. And, you know, before it was canceled initially, the NCAA came out with a statement to each team saying, you know, we're moving towards having no fans at these. This was before everything got canceled. We're moving towards having no fans at these tournaments, and, you know, to try and keep them going. And they said only the most immediate staff can travel with the team. Whoever is an essential staff member will be allowed to come. So it's whatever players are on the roster and the essential staff, you know, any supporting staff that you have, they can't travel just because we're trying to limit the amount of people that we're putting into one building. So moving forward, I think something to look at now. Just because, you know, the more this keeps getting pushed back and the more you keep canceling seasons, and, you know, it starts in the US, it'll start with football. You know, and football is the biggest sport there. Hockey starts right after football. Hockey will be the second sport to start. So, you know, these are sports that if you keep pushing things back, you know, you're not only affecting these teams and these athletes who only have 5 years to play for. You know, there's athletes here that are trying to go and play professionally, and this could push them back that much more. And it has a ripple effect then to the pro leagues. You know, pro leagues don't get the development out of players that, you know, NHL teams rely on having some of their players playing college. You know, Cole Caulfield announced a month or so ago he's going back to Wisconsin for another year. That's likely to be his last year at Wisconsin. But what happens if he can't play? You know, maybe, yeah, he comes in then. Maybe for them, they just felt that they're a year away from wanting to bring him in. But, you know, you lose a full year of development from a guy who's, you know, touted in the goal. He can't get that development if he's not playing against the best in college next year. So it has a ripple effect throughout. So I think that will be the next thing they do, is to go, you know, start next year with no fans at all. So at least they can continue, you know, the players not losing out, and, you know, these pro teams not losing out. So I think that's definitely where it will go before getting fans back in there. Because if they rush fans back in there starting in August when, you know, college starts, I think there'll be a big impact, and we'll be right back in quarantine.
Have they officially just canceled the rest of the season?
Yeah, NCAA, all sports. Every sport has been canceled. Basketball, hockey, baseball, everything that was still a winter sport like hockey, or a spring sport like baseball and softball, everything was canceled. And, you know, for them, it makes more sense. For the pro leagues, it's different. You know, for these athletes, there's a bunch of things that are part of their to remain eligible, and one of that is being so like and go into September, October, because then you're impacting the year after that. The NHL has that leeway to say, okay, if we end in September or if we end in October, let's push this back a little bit, shorten the seasons, whatever. They have a lot more leeway. They're professional guys. Their job is to play hockey. These are students. Some of them, yes, some of them will go on to play in the NHL, Europe, wherever. But for the bulk of them, all they are student athletes. They're here to get 4 years, get their education, and play hockey is the asset to it. So they canceled it right away just because they don't have as much leeway as these professional leagues have. And for a lot of these players, there's a lot more at stake than just hockey.
Right. Adam?
Yeah. First of all, I smiled a bit there when you brought up good old Cole Caulfield, because I'm a big Habs fan. But that's a player that is almost a star in Montreal without even playing a game. And you look at some guys in the CHL, right? Alexis Lafreniere is already doing commercials with Philip. So I want to ask you, what's kind of fan interaction like, instead of the CHL compared to the NCAA, where in the CHL we already look at these players without playing a game and we look at them as stars. It's strange.
Yeah, it's a different type of fan interaction. I think there's definitely a lot more of it in the NCAA just because of in the US, any sport, be it football, basketball, hockey, the camaraderie of students, alumni, people who live around that university is so much more than anything you'll ever experience in Canada. You might have some of these smaller CHL teams out in the East Coast that may rally around their, Q team or WHL team just because that's all they have around. But, these universities have alumni bases that follow these kids. And beyond that, you'll have Montreal fans that if they live near Wisconsin or, live near Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan, they're going to go Cole Caulfield. Same with, Alex Turcotte and Kings fans. Just these teams still follow the player no matter if they're playing in the OHL or if they're playing in the NCAA or, if they're playing overseas. They're still going to follow that player. And, where the greatest impact comes is the fans in college in the US versus Canada. That's where it's so much greater. And, you have people lined up. We went and played Wisconsin this year, and, you can see the student section at Wisconsin's like lined up right outside their locker room, trying to fist bump Keandre Miller and Cole Caulfield and Alex Turcotte as these guys are coming through because, two of them signing, go to the NHL right after the season, both first round picks. That's something you don't see in the CHL. You don't see the amount of talent, and you got multiple first round picks on some of these teams, Boston University, Boston College, three of those would play. So, just the amount of talent that's in college, it's, if you look around the NHL, it's the biggest growing league that, prospects are coming through. So I think there's just so much more talent that's in the NCAA that allows this fan interaction. But, the biggest thing that'll allow it to, further surpass the CHL is the ability for these players to do commercials. Like Alexis Lafreniere, he has that ability to still do, marketing. You see him on Bauer stuff all the time. Like you said, he's in that commercial. NCAA players aren't allowed to do that. It's against eligibility. If you do that, you won't be allowed to play. You can't do that until you've officially signed with an agent and leave college. So that'll be the next step, and that's the next thing for the NCAA is allowing these players to make money off things like that and be appeared in things like that. So once that happens, it'll just further surpass anything to be used for.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's something that we'll see within the next few years? Just because, there's a lot of, I guess, not kind of controversy with the whole G League starting their own development program. Do you think that's something the NCAA will explore and opening the players allowing the players, to kind of push away from that, like being able to do the things that like a CHL player would be able to do?
Yeah, and I don't know if they'll ever be able, I don't know if the NCAA will ever be able to reach something like the G League has. What the G League has to offer beyond players being allowed to go and get sponsorships right away is they have the ability to pay players. Like there's that kid who is the top prospect, or that's rated schooler in the G League, $500,000 next year. College will never be able to offer that. That's the one thing that the G League will have to offer that college can't, is the ability to pay players, especially that lump sum money. But the next step for the NCAA definitely will be to allow players to, on their own and through an advisor or through their families, be able to find the sponsorships and brand marketing deals to bring in some money, add to their notoriety behind them. And, I think that's the next wave of hockey in general. You're starting to see with Austin Matthews is these players, breaching outside of their comfort zone. And, you never before would you see an NHL player on the front of GQ or doing GQ interviews, and you see Austin Matthews doing it. I think that's definitely going to be the next wave, and that's what's going to help the NHL, get that entertainment factor and that notoriety that the NFL and the NBA and the MLB have. Just for so long, it's been this old man's game, and it's part because of who the own the manager are, and the are like Joe Thornton and even Sidney Crosby, although a little bit younger, he's still a lot more of that old man mentality. But you see with Matthews coming in and Jack Eichel and Mitch Marner that this shift to this younger mindset and the ability to be your own brand, and that's where it's going to go. And with the NCAA, that'll be the next step for them, is allowing players to do that. And then for prospects, no matter what sport you're in, it'll make the NCAA that much more attractive, because not only can you go and play against other people who are going to go professional, you're playing at a high level, you're getting the chance to still be your own brand and market yourself and get sponsorship money, and you're getting an education out of it.
Well, you brought up Austin Matthews there, and it doesn't take long for people to bring up Arizona before they bring up Austin Matthews, just because of it's Arizona. You don't really think of them as a big hockey market. So I want to ask you: is hockey in Arizona as unknown to Canada?
Yes and no. Yes, because it's definitely you don't think of it as a hockey market, and even there. I think there's 6 hockey rinks in Arizona as a whole, which isn't a lot. I can probably drive down the street 20 minutes and pass 6 rinks here. 6 rinks in all of Arizona, it's not a lot. So yes, it is as much of an unknown, but it's still the fastest growing sport in Arizona. And that's because of Austin Matthews and because of Arizona State. Arizona State, it's only going into next season will be their 5th season at the NCAA Division I level. It's showing kids that it's in the Valley of Arizona. It can be something. And then making the NCAA tournament last year and having guys go to the NHL, it's showing that it can grow in a market like this. The Coyotes have to do a lot more to try and help, but I think Matthews State have been huge in implementing that. And he skates at our rink every summer. The bye week he came, skated all week at the rink. So he's been huge to growing in Arizona, and he definitely takes a lot of pride in that, and in knowing that there's a lot of kids that are growing up now, and instead of being from Arizona and being your typical football player, because football is huge in Arizona, or going and playing baseball, which is also big, they're saying no, I want to go and I want to be like Austin Matthews and play hockey.
Mm-hmm. Another really big personality around Arizona is Paul Bissonnette, probably one of the biggest personalities in the league for the past few seasons, really. So when you combine him, Bissonnette, when you combine Austin Matthews, what potential does Arizona have to turn into a real hockey market?
The potential's there. The potential's definitely there. And, Bissonnette's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. Just like now, I had to be around him quite a bit because he comes to the games a lot. And, I've been around the Gila River Arena where the Coyotes play a lot. And, there's only a certain amount that a guy like Matthews and, to a lesser extent, Bissonnette can do for a market. The biggest thing that can be done in this market is what the Coyotes have, to be able, they are really missing an opportunity. And part of it is because of where they're located in Arizona. Where Arizona State is located is in Tempe, which is kind of between Phoenix and Scottsdale, which is the two, bigger markets and higher income markets and nicer markets in Arizona. They're out in Glendale, which is about an hour drive from Tempe, Scottsdale. The reason they don't have the fan base they have and the attendance they have is because nobody wants to travel out there. They need to move, and there's been talks over the last 5 to 7 years of them moving. There was about then State Bank, and then that was thrown out at the last second. They need to move. Once they move, they can definitely increase their their brand awareness to every other other person that's in Arizona. And, that's where that opportunity will come, and it can thrive there. You've seen in warm climates like Tampa Bay, Florida, even, there's players that are coming out of there. There's, Tampa Bay's been, one of the elite teams the last 3-4 years. Although they haven't been able to get it done in the playoffs, they've still been an elite team. So it's shown that it can definitely thrive in warm climates. It's centric around the NHL team. Austin Matthews can, he can go and he can be Connor McDavid, and it's still not going to reach its potential. And, the potential is the Coyotes, and, they're still missing that. And, once they move and start to get the right things in place, I think eating guys are in there. But still, when Austin Matthews came to town this year, I went into the game, and the Coyotes were in a playoff spot at the time, and you have the biggest star in Arizona there, one of the best players in the league, Austin Matthews, on the other side of it. And there was empty seats all over the place, and the Leafs fans outnumbered the Coyotes fans. And that's a problem. When a guy like him comes to town, that shouldn't happen. So, especially when the team's competing. So, the opportunity's there, but I think you're still about another 5 to 7 years from seeing that opportunity really reach its potential.
You mentioned, I know you said the stadium was probably one of the biggest things that the team can do. Is there anything else, whether that be, I know last summer there was talks about how they interact with the fans. Is that something they can improve on too? Not just this, like what else other than the stadium, moving stadiums, can they do to improve that potential or reach that potential that you were talking about?
Yeah, so of course the stadium is just one thing. You could move the stadium, and if they were a bottom-feeding team for 20 straight years, how much are you really going to get? There's very few fan bases around the NHL where a team can, let's say a decade be bad, and you'll still get that following. Leafs fans, Canadiens fans, there's probably only 5 franchises in the NHL where teams will still follow it. So beyond the arena, they need to continue to be a playoff team year after year. And, last year they were, on the upswing. They were, moving towards the playoffs. This year they acquire marketable players, and they were in a playoff spot for a large portion of the year. So it's, they have to be a team that's going to contend, and they have to be a team with marketable players. And they had this, Phil, he has a lot around him, but, for Coyotes fans, that's a name that's won 2 Stanley Cups, been in the media. He's a former high-end top first-round pick. So for them, that's big to get. And, now they're starting to get some of that, some of those marketable players. Taylor Hall was there. Who knows what's going to happen to him this summer? But, you have young guys like Barrett Hayton, Clayton Keller coming up, and that's going to be huge for them, is getting those young guys that can really help propel this franchise. They need to be able to connect with the fans. Is you have to have those marketable players, and in Toronto, for example, they had those 3-4 years where, they were kind of in the middle of everything, and, the whole Shanna plan started. Of course there's still that fan base following just because they're the Toronto Maple Leafs. But when Austin Matthews came to town, you saw 30 from the walk in, and you see that 90% of those jerseys would be 34, and it's going to be like that until he leaves town. So once you get that marketable player, you can just bring fans into one place. And, that's what they're missing right now. And I think Taylor Hall was helping get there. But, it's hard to bring a guy in who's, 20, he's in the middle of his career. What they need, and they've missed out on that through, bad luck in the lottery. is getting that, that franchise center stone through the draft, that, first or second overall pick that people are going to be like, wow, this guy's going to be here the next 20 years. And they've yet to have that. And the high end picks they have had, who they've thought would be great, haven't been as, panned out as much. And even Clayton Keller, he's been inconsistent at times. So what they're really missing is that marketable player and that consistency to contend.
You can definitely tell that you're obviously a lot closer to Arizona hockey than a lot of us. So I want to ask, not some answer of the how does it make you feel when you see the guy on Twitter saying, why do we still have a team in Arizona? And then it comes to the Nordiques, a second team in Toronto. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, before I went to Arizona, I'd always, I'd thought of myself as that guy who would tweet something like that out. And I tend to agree with it. Why not bring the Nordiques back or move them somewhere else? Before Seattle got the expansion, why not move them to Seattle, do something? I would, being in Arizona, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm off that boat because, for so long you've heard, the Coyotes are in money trouble here. The Coyotes are this. They can't renew their arena. They've been bad for so many years. They get 1 year where they make the playoffs and the next year they don't. They've had so many years of bringing in new people, new ownership, new GMs, new players. And, they're always saying, oh, we're on the upswing. We're on the upswing. And I think the next 5 years are going to tell all. The next 3 to 5 years is going to tell all. If they can't get it done in the next 3 to 5 years and show that they can be an NHL franchise that's going to, generate revenue and not be, in the negative every year. If they're going to generate revenue, bring in fans, and be a team that, people want to associate themselves with, that'll be told in the next 3 to 5 years. And if it's not, then it's time to move on. And if you want to move them back to Quebec and be the Nordiques, then I'd agree. So yeah, being in Arizona, I wouldn't necessarily say that, I'm going to contend that fact, but what I will say is it can definitely be a franchise in Arizona and it can definitely be a market where hockey grows, but it's got to start with the Coyotes and they've got to do that in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think right now they have all the pieces in place. The front office is better than it's ever been. They have that new owner who's he's got his sights set on the moon. Obviously, like I said, the front office is great. John Chaika, he's the CMD in the so if it's not done next 3 to 5 years, I don't know when it'll ever happen. And then I think it's time for them to discuss moving it.
Mm-hmm. You've talked about consistency there. The Coyotes have always been my sweetheart pick of they're finally going to do it this year. Daniel.
Hey, Chase. So I just have a few questions when it comes to, bridging that idea of NHL players and Arizona State. I know that they've had a lot of guys coming up recently. I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Dimitrios Kuzmontsis.
Yeah, Kumanzis,
yes. I know he was a 4th-round pick by Calgary, I believe, in 2018.
Yeah.
He's one of the guys. And then someone that we've talked about a lot on the show has been Joey Decord.
Yeah.
So, how have these guys been kind of instrumental in growing that brand Arizona hockey?
What they've shown is that, one, there's high-end players that want to come to Arizona State and not go to your traditional Boston University, Boston College, Wisconsin, wherever it may be. And, they show that this team can compete. And it started with those guys. And last year with Joey Decord, if we don't have Joey Decord last year, we don't make it to the NCAA tournament. There was games where he stole the show. And, he's starting to show that in the AHL, and he started in the coast this season. But you're starting to see that top end players can go and play here. And Kumanzis, he's a 4th-round pick. He's a high end skill player, very fast, but he's still starting to figure it out. So I think he'll, when he came in, people thought max 2 years. You give him at the college level before he signs, but I think he's a 4-year guy. He's still trying to piece together and kid. This thing in college that's different than the CHL is the CHL is a major junior league. Guys go in there at 16, 17. You see sometimes in the WHL, this past season, you see in the OHL before, guys getting exceptional status. The kid in WHL, he's 14 going on 15 or 15 going on 16. In the NCAA, the average age is about 20, 21, and Kumanzis came in as a 17 turning 18-year-old. He came in as a true freshman, which you don't see a lot. You only see that with the high-end players, the Cole Caulfields, the Alex Turcottes. Keandre Miller was a true freshman, and it's those first-round picks that you see coming in and doing well. And I think he's still in that adjustment phase of, trying to adjust to the more physical game. But those guys are huge. And, you're starting to see it with Joey Decord. Nobody ever thought he'd sign a deal. And, he was a 199th overall pick, and he goes and signs a deal. And now he's starting to show that it's more than just that deal he signed. And he's big. He's been doing great in the AHL with Belleville, and he's going to continue to do that. His biggest problem there, and I know there was a lot of discussion is if it should be Ottawa, if it should be somewhere else, is they've got a lot of goaltenders there. And they continue. Last year they drafted another one. They continue to add goaltenders. So it's going to be a battle for him, but there's no doubt that he'll play in the NHL one day again. He obviously played that one game last year, but he'll be there again. And Kumanzis, he's working towards it. And we had another guy sign in the NHL this year at the end of the season. So, they're huge for, showing kids in Arizona and, just kids playing hockey anywhere that it's a market that can produce players.
What makes Joey so special? Because I'm really high, like as a Leafs fan, I'm weirdly high on the Ottawa Senators. They got all these players, all the young players who joined the team this year. And, you look at their AHL team and they're absolutely dominating the AHL. And yeah, they've been drafting goalies the last couple of years, but if you think of the prospects that a lot of people talk about, I don't necessarily think, for me, I don't look at the goalies a whole lot. So what makes him so special and that guy that could be their goalie?
For him, it's his mindset. And, that's what's always allowed him to continue to excel. He's drafted 199th overall. Someone drafted 199th overall, nobody ever thinks they're going to be much of anything. Especially as a goalie. Yes, goalies are usually taken later in the draft, except for the high-end guys, like Spencer Knight last year. I believe he was 14th overall to Florida. But for him, it's always been his mindset that he's always said that he's going to be the best and he's going to play there. And, start off in this race, he ends up getting better. And then his third year, he was one of the finalists for the Mike Richter Award for the best goalie in the NCAA. And arguably he could have got it if the team goes past the first game of the playoffs. It's his mindset, and he's always trying to get better. He's always in the gym trying to get more athletic or agile. And it's, from him is the game will be quiet. And then, you'll see just this flash of leather, him coming cross crease and making this huge save. And, they played a game at the ACC this year, and it was like on TSN and everywhere on social media, this save that he made. And it's like, oh my God, that's Joey Decord. And, I sent him a text quick, like, Jesus, you're in the ACC making these saves. It's his ability to just, he's a good big game player, and he comes up at the big moments, which is what you need out of a good goalie. And the other thing for him is, his puck handling is one of the best I've ever seen. I watch a lot of hockey, be it OHL, I watch the NHL a lot, but his puck handling is, one of the best I've ever seen. And, first game last year when I got there is the first game of the season. They're playing Alaska, and first period, it's late in the period. He gets a puck. They dump it in. Both teams go for a line change. Johnny Walker, which is the leading scorer on ASU the last 3 seasons, he comes off the bench. He comes off the bench. He's going straight to the opposing team's blue line, and Joey Decord's behind our net and sends a perfect saucer pass, tape to tape, sends in Johnny Walker on a breakaway and scored. So his puck handling is elite. And, that's why I think, his mindset, his ability to always want to get better, and his puck handling are really going to help him get back to the NHL. And then he's going to have to show once he's there that he can be consistent. But I have no doubt that he'll at least get another shot to show that.
Okay. And do you think he has the potential to be that Ottawa goaltender? I know, last year I believe they drafted Mad Sogard. They acquired Philip Gustafson from Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. They still have Marcus Hogberg. They have that's 4 guys right there. What do you think he has the potential to beat out at least 2 of them?
I think he does. Do I think he has the potential to be a full-time starting NHL goalie? I don't know, and that's left to be seen. The goalie position is always the toughest. You never know who it could be. You see guys coming out of the third, fourth, fifth round, guys signed from overseas, guys signed undrafted all the time and making it. But he definitely has the will to want to do it, inside him. And could he do it? Yeah, he could. I think Hogberg's very good, and I think Sogard's another very good goalie, and he's gonna come through that system. But for Joey, it may mean having to leave Ottawa and go to a place where there's not a lot of goaltending and a team that's rebuilding. For him, he just felt that Ottawa was always good to him. They sent staff and development staff to watch a lot of his games over the 3 years he was at ASU. They kept in contact with him, and each year brought him to development camp. So for him, he felt he owed it to them to go there, and he liked how he was being treated. But it remains to see if that'll be the best situation for him. I think the competition definitely helps because you want to keep getting better. You want to beat the guy that's beside you. It'll be tough to see, but he definitely could be Ottawa's guy.
Okay, Adam.
This will be the last one for me. You've been very generous with your time, Chase. We appreciate it.
No worries.
Could you just give me one player in the NCAA right now that you think is really going to make a difference? Sorry, is going to be a real big difference maker when they make it to the NHL? Just one guy, and what makes him a special player?
You look around the NCAA, there's guys everywhere that be it being first round picks. You got an Ottawa guy out in North Dakota, Jacob Bernard Docker, Canadian. You've got Spencer Knight with Boston College, a goalie who's going to be a great NHL goalie with Florida. Obviously Cole Caulfield, he's going to be a goal scorer. I think he's got that potential to be, a lot of people thought Alex DeBrincat, they thought that his goal scoring was going to stop after juniors. And then he came in and he's just been doing great things in the NHL. And I think Cole Caulfield's got that ability to be that goal scorer. But for me, it's actually a guy that's with Arizona State, and not a lot of people who if you don't follow college hockey, you're not going to know about him because I think personally that he's the best undrafted player in the NCAA. And, he probably had 8 to 10 NHL offers this season, but he decided that he's going to come back for another year. He probably had 20 offers. And, the Leafs, they were sending advisors to our practices to watch him. His name's Josh Maniscalco. Just finished his sophomore year. He's 6'3" or 6'2", 205-pound defenseman. And he's just an auto breakout. He can take the puck from, behind his net and go and make a play all the way at the other end. And it'll finish in the back of the net. He's got that ability to play both sides of the puck very well. And, I think he's going to be a huge difference maker for the team. Brinson Pasichnuk signed with the San Jose Sharks. He was with us this year. There's a big void left on the defensive end, and Brinson and Josh were defensive partners, and he's going to get to take the reins as that number one guy now and show that he can be that number one guy. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be after him, and there were a lot of teams this year that came to watch him and constantly asking about him. And he likes to come back, but he's going to be a huge difference maker for the team in general. But then once he does sign, he's going to be a guy that he's not going to have to spend time in the coast. He's going to go straight to the HL, and he'll have a chance to definitely compete to be in the NHL. And he's got the physical ability, but he's also got that, he's got defensive hockey sense. He's got the offensive IQ to be able to take that puck and go end to end. The skating abilities, he takes a little bit to get going, but once he's going, it's just he glides through the ice, it seems. So he's going to be that big difference maker that I think will be the next big NHL NCAA signing. You see one guy every year that's always a highly touted player. Jimmy VC was a few years ago, and Will Butcher goes to New Jersey, and every year there's that one guy that's like, okay, it's him. And next year I think it's definitely going to be Josh Maniscalco.
I have one more question. Actually, just kind of combined to two, if that's okay. you have Austin Lemieux on your on the roster there, and his father Mario has commented a lot about like he's helpful. His son kind of like continues to develop at the NCAA level. So I guess like the two questions that are in one, I guess, is what does it mean to have Austin on the team, and second, like what does it kind of mean for like these guys that may not be drafted or they're the lower picks that kind of continue their development in the NCAA as that pathway?
Yeah, so Austin's he's a funny guy. He if you ever look at him or if you saw a picture of him or saw him in person, you would never think he's the personality that he is. And he's honestly one of the funniest kids I've ever had the privilege to be around. And he can make people laugh just like that. He's just the lightest guy in the locker room, and always a smile on his face, always happy to go. He's consistent at times, but obviously when you get to be the son of one of the best NHL players ever, you're going to have that elite hockey sense. And at times he thinks the game too fast for people who are, for his line mates or the people he's playing with, people on the team. He thinks, 2 steps ahead when they're still here, only 1 step ahead. And, he's putting a puck somewhere, and then you see the opposing team will come and intercept it. And it's like, well, if he's thinking like some of the NHL guys can, like the Sidney Crosbys or like his dad did, his right winger would have been there coming cross ice and taking that puck on a breakaway by now. So that's his only problem. But, for players to develop through the NCAA, they get the chance to get an education if it doesn't work out for them. And 2, they're getting the chance to play against, for some of them, they're playing against physically mature people, and in the CHL, that's one of the biggest problems. And, things you got CHL, they didn't have a lot of that physical maturity they were playing against, especially for a smaller guy. If you're a smaller guy who doesn't play a big physical game, the biggest adjustment besides the speed of the game will be, now you've got Shea Weber on the other side of the blue line who's trying to take your head off as you come across the blue line. You don't have that as much in the CHL. In the NCAA, you have a lot more of those physically mature guys because you can have guys up till the age of 24, 25 years old. Depending when they started, you can have a freshman who's 21 years old. So you're playing against much more physically mature guys, and it gives you that ability to not only play against physically mature guys, but also play against high-end draft picks. If you play against Wisconsin this past year, they have 3 already first-round picks, plus a kid who's supposed to go in the first round this year. If you go Boston University, Boston College, they're full. Everyone on that roster, aside from a few players, is drafted somewhere. So you have the ability to play against guys who are already drafted and are going to professionally the ability to play at that high level and high pace of hockey.
So the last question from me is what is it like, and I know he's only really a volunteer coach, but there was a story on it last year and it kind of popped out to me, and that Eddie Lack is working or volunteering at Arizona State. What is that like?
Eddie is one of the most fun guys I've ever been around. He's just he's always trying to pull a prank or always trying to joke with someone. And the reason he's volunteer is just because of the NCAA guidelines. You can only have 3 full-time named and paid coaches. So, we already have those 3. So he comes on as a volunteer just because you can't pay him and you can't technically name him as the goalie coach. But, Bill around is just trying to get that next laugh. He's one of the funniest and lightest guys I've ever been around. And, beyond that, just the ability for him to tell NHL stories and stories with Roberto Luongo, while he was in Vancouver, coming up through the NHL, not only to the players and the goalies who are trying to make it to that next level, but just everyone around. Anytime you hear those NHL stories, those are stories you can only hear from someone who's been in the league for 10 years. So it's just fun to get to know those stories and, learn more about what it's really like to play professionally or come up through the system or any of the fun stories or memories he has from playing professionally. So just to hear those stories, it just gives you new perspective. And obviously it's nice to have those stories in your back pocket. Now he moves on to post-career. And we were lucky enough to have him around. And, that's one of the things I've seen with Arizona State is a lot, and it comes, be it, Mary Lemieux, Austin Matthews comes around a lot. Bissonnette brings, you know, Christian Fisher, whoever else with the Coyotes within the games. Clayton Keller skates at our rink full time in the summer. Nicholas Hjalmarsson, you know, different guys were with the Coyotes. And then before, you know, the COVID-19 happened, you know, Austin Matthews this summer was going to be hosting a NHL like a 1 week kind of you know, just camp to keep guys sharp, and he's going to be, you know, some of the best players from around the NHL coming through. You know, last summer Barzal came through, and Patrick Marleau came through, and right now Freddie Anderson's out there. So, you know, there's a lot of NHL players that, you know, either retire out in Arizona or want to go through Arizona because it's a nice spot when they're off. So Eddie Lack, we're lucky enough that he decided to retire in Arizona, and you know, it's one of the most fun guys you can be around.
Okay.
No, maybe?
No. Wait, sorry, I didn't hear you. Cut out for me for a second.
Are we good? Is that right?
Yeah, I don't have any more questions. You guys have anything else to ask?
We're just gonna say thank you, Chase. This was amazing. Thank you for giving me some time.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, anytime. My pleasure.
You are our first guest, so
it's an honor.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any chance we're gonna be able to drag you back on in the future?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely let me know whenever, as long as I'm free. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you for listening to another episode of the 2-on-1 podcast. Make sure, if you like it, make sure to click the like button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you are listening to wherever you're listening to, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, make sure to check out the social media links down below. Make sure to follow the Instagram page of the podcast. Follow all of us on social media for more updates on the show and to see our hilarious tweets. And that's about it. And check out Adam's YouTube page. Apparently an Andre Markov video is coming. No one knows when, though.
The general.
Right, Adam?
It's like the Habs trying to acquire star talent. There's a lot of opportunities out there, but it's difficult to do.
Oh, awesome. So we should be seeing it soon.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, see you guys on Wednesday.